held his heartbeat in my hand.
Way down in the hole.
All that time he was gone, I only prayed for him.
Over there, I was a liberator. People lined up in the streets waiting for us.
Sometimes I actually miss it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm coming back from the fire.
You're the one always talking about our own and our own parts are the only way to get up from under their foot.
Crawling back from the sun.
I don't want you working for them.
I won't be working for them. I'll be working for us.
Coming back from the fire and I'm
Went off to fight for my country to come back and finally had and change the bid.
I don't know what they let you do over there, but you in Mississippi now. You use the back door.
boy, you found trust.
Jamie saw in a different way. And when his eyes were on me, I felt like I was no longer invisible. When I think of the farm, I think of mud. I dreamed in brown.
Way down in the water.
Great job, Garrett.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I mean, I can't imagine any soldiers at that time fighting the war, coming back, and everything's so strange and different. Were you able to talk to any veterans to help understand the frustration coming back home?
Well, I've done a few war films now, and actually after this film I did, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, we
Year ago, right?
yeah, we trained with a lot of the Navy SEALs, and a lot of them now are my closest friends, and you know, we've talked a lot about it, how they return home, and what they deal with, and how they've dealt with their, you know, PTSD, as some would put it. So I've gotten their stories. I've also, both of my grandfathers were in the war. My grandpa Martin was stationed in the Philippines during World War II, and my grandpa Gene was stationed in Germany, but never had to fight on the front lines. And so I got to see the experience of one that returned home and would talk about it and tell the stories. And in this kind of post-World War II era, it was essentially kind of the don't talk about it, or as I've heard referred to before, you know, get your mind right. And that grandpa would sit in the tractor, and he had 8 wonderful children and a wonderful wife, but his time in the tractor was where he got to reflect, so he didn't have to share his trauma and experiences with his family and put into the mind about, you know, what he'd seen, which he'd rather forget. And a lot of that ultimately, you know, gave me a sense of you know, connecting to Jamie a little more.
And when you share about your grandfather would spend a lot of time sitting in the tractor, his best friend wasn't a bottle of Jack or something. Like your character, he's totally
No,
like...
he'd have an old Milwaukee Light or something when he came home from the fields. But
Right.
yeah, I never saw him.
But
you know,
not like your
over in-
character, because it's like that's
Yeah.
a way for James to escape his
Yeah.
guilt or whatever he was going
And I
through.
think because my grandfather raised a wonderful family and he had a home and there was a lot of love there, he didn't need to use escapism, you know, or escapism to the bottle and as much, and you know, he never really drank that much. But that was something where Jamie's character came home to a home that he left, and you know, I don't know if he ever really cared to return there, but he returned to a home so out of place because of the survivor's guilt and PTSD and coming back more as a ghost. And even before he'd left to go to the war, initially I always had plans to go to Los Angeles and become like the next Errol Flynn, so there was a huge conflict on his identity and what his idea of home was. So that's why he was able to sort of, you know, act up in the ways that he did and dance around with the bottles and the gals as much as he did.
I seen you sniffing after him. Maybe Henry is too thick to notice, but I ain't.
You better open your eyes, big brother. You're so busy worrying about yourself and your farm, you can't even see your own wife is miserable.
I used to walk away from the fight. I no more.
This land never would be theirs.
You don't need to go, Jamie.
I can't stay here.
When you mentioned that a lot of friends that you met last year when you did the other film, and a lot of those guys from the Navy SEALs, did they tell you how they overcome the PTSD or how they dealt with it? Because I'm sure it's not easy to...
No, the common thing is you know, obviously the sleep and thoughts, but a lot of these guys, because they've Here's one thing: is there's one of my best pals who, you know, he was in Fallujah and Afghanistan and Iraq. He's come back and he's really done something with his life and changed it around. And the one wish that he wishes is that eventually, you know, in cinema they might start representing some ex-soldiers that have come back and made something of their lives. These Navy SEALs, the stuff that they've seen and the things that they've done, they've come back and now they're motivational speakers, or they're training other SEALs, and they overcome certain traumas this way, and it's all kind of unique. Some I know that are working in certain offices here in LA doing, you know, just I don't know, it's different. So, but I mean, yes, I've gotten plenty of stories from them though, and they're, you know, they're not always the happiest, and some are actually quite wonderful when it's the stories of how many people they've saved on a lot of these missions, and that seems to be more of a common one.
Well, great job, Garrett. Great movie too.
Thank you.
They worked until they sweated.
You'll be okay.
They sweated until they bled. They bled until they died.